Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jake Pineda, Marketing Coordinator at CSCMP. Super excited to present this webinar to you today. Looks like we do still have attendees flowing in. So I'm going to give a minute here before handing this over to our panelists. Touch on housekeeping notes really quick. Attendees are in listen-only mode. Although we would love to have any questions from you, if you can go ahead and submit those using the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. This webinar is recorded, so that will be available as well. And with that, I will go ahead and hand this over to our panelists. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Today, we're happy to co-present with Loadsmart's strategic partner, Yonder. Thad Braska, GVP Global Solutions at Yonder, and Hunter Yaw, VP of Product and Business Development at Loadsmart, will provide an overview of the first steps toward digital transformation in freight. With that said, I'll hand it over to Hunter to begin.
Great, thanks, Adrienne. So I think really the key premise of what we want to talk about today is that a lot of shippers, have come to the view that if you're using a TMS and if you're using, a routing guide, a list of primary and backup carriers with static rates that you have logged in there, you're more or less doing what you need to do in order to manage your freight. And I think, it takes little more than a year like this one for people to realize that static list of backup rates, held in a TMS is just not enough to manage through a challenging market, is just not enough to manage through the shortages of capacity or spikes in demand that we've seen certainly this year, but it can't be too surprising for anyone because all you have to do is look back to 2018 to see the last time that we had similar market conditions. So if you're a shipper and you're relying on a basic version of a TMS and an old school static routing guide where you have a list of those primary and backup rates, we just feel that you're missing out on a lot of opportunities in terms of the best practices that are emerging in the industry, and the volatility of the market only serves to further reinforce the need for rethinking and really, as we put it, breaking free from the static and unreliable old school routing guides. So we think that the benefits of getting away from that are many, and the reason that we're co-presenting here with the folks from Yonder is that we believe that a lot of the solutions that they've developed as their systems and company have evolved are really well suited to fit into this new market, as of course is what Loadsmart provides to our shippers. So we believe that instant pricing and booking are a critical part of this. The idea that you're requesting a rate over the phone or over email, waiting a couple hours to hear back, and then not sure whether or not the tender is going to get accepted when you send it over is really, we believe a suboptimal way of working, and shippers deserve and frankly need better in order to survive and to do well in the kind of market environments that we're seeing very consistently these days. That requires 100% tender acceptance, and it also means that whatever solutions you provide should be ready to integrate with your TMS, just as your TMS should be ready to integrate with the solutions you need. And that's why Loadsmart is excited about our partnership with Yonder, because it really is kind of a meeting of the minds in terms of the importance of connectivity, in terms of the importance of building this network of solutions around a central platform that a shipper can use to have that confidence that they have access to high quality capacity. And by quality, of course, we mean also exceptional service. I think historically there's been this sense that if you're not moving a load with your main contracted carrier, you should expect suboptimal performance. If you have to go to the spot market, that should mean a drop in service and a drop in your expectations. And we fundamentally disagree. We believe that the real-time quoting and booking solutions that Yonder customers who are working with Loadsmart can access provide a service level and should set a new level of expectations for those instant pricing options within their system and for them to manage their freight. So moving on to the next slide, we want to talk a little bit about what is this concept of smart truckload, what it is that goes into that, and what does Loadsmart contribute to make that a reality. So Loadsmart uses technology to automate the pricing, the booking, sourcing, scheduling, and tracking of shipments. So put it another way, it's really nose to tail, it's the entire life cycle of a shipment in a highly digitized, automated format. And it's critical to note that Loadsmart takes full operational responsibility for the shipment. And this is really why Our partnership, for example, with Blue Yonder is a great example of what we do, in the sense that Blue Yonder takes full ownership of your technology base, of the platform from which you're going to execute and plan your operations, and Loadsmart takes full responsibility for moving the loads that are tendered to us. We both use technology in order to achieve the goals and to deliver the services that our customers expect, and in particular the customers that we have in common. But at the same time, it's important to note that Loadsmart does take full operational responsibility for the freight that we move. We use technology to move that freight in a more automated, more efficient way to provide greater transparency, greater visibility. But at the end of the day, it is our responsibility to make sure that a truck shows up on time in the right place to the right loading gate, loads that product and delivers it on time to the customer, intact as expected, providing high visibility and a maximum service level and the best possible customer experience along the way. So, in order to facilitate that, we want to note that the integration itself is free. We believe that a shipper should not have to pay to access rates. A shipper should not have to pay to understand what their options are. And so the only cost is to move the load. If you choose to book with Loadsmart, then Loadsmart will invoice you the cost that we quote. For the very simple reason, again, that we believe that access to the option, the ability to see what's out there, should be every shipper's right, just as it's every consumer's right, in broader consumer markets. And the connectivity of TMS tracking and warehouse platforms provides opportunities for shippers to really bring together the disparate threads of their supply chain, which in reality are all, of course, closely connected, but in the past have relied on systems that really don't quite piece together very well. And we believe, again, that that's something that has to change in the market. And both Loadsmart and Blue Yonder are committed to delivering solutions that can help bring together those pieces that previously have been disparate, despite the fact that, of course, from an operational perspective, they're very closely connected. And of course, at Loadsmart, we provide dedicated account management to make sure that even though there is a high level of technology and automation delivering our solutions, at the same time, there is always someone on the other end of the phone, someone you know and have worked with before, that you can contact in the case of any operational issues for exception management, but also to do analytics to understand the profile of your freight, your performance, what we could be doing better, what potential efficiencies there are on the shipper side that potentially have been untapped. And so those account management relationships are critical for us. Despite how much we invest in technology, we still believe that there should always be a solid relationship with the shipper. So moving on to the next slide and talking a little bit more about the partnership that we have with Blue Yonder and what that offers. What we hope you guys will note here, and I'll spare you, reading through each of these disparate components, but what we hope you'll notice is that it is a more comprehensive solution. It's a more end-to-end approach, saying that, hey, it's not just about quoting on its own, or about tendering on its own, or about tracking on its own, or invoicing on its own. That all of these components of the life cycle of the shipment are just that. They're the life cycle of a single shipment. So the idea that you shouldn't be able to connect those pieces in a single system, we believe is antiquated. It was a function of the limitations of the solutions that were offered to shippers in the past. And that's just not the case anymore. And so by integrating with Blue Yonder, Loadsmart is able to provide instantly bookable rates, 100% tender acceptance, full responsibility for the shipment, high visibility, and great account management, all directly in your native instance of Blue Yonder. You do not have to leave Blue Yonder in order to capture all the benefits that Loadsmart offers. And we believe that that's because of this partnership that we've built, where we both believe in connectivity and network solutions, and Fab will speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. It's really an exciting time from a solution standpoint, because more and more what we're driving toward, and certainly our strategy at Blue Yonder, is to bring to the business world, right, particularly the world of supply chain, what we already experience today in our personal lives with our phones and the app ecosystem that exists on our devices, right? To think about any app that you download, whether it's for fitness or social or whatever it happens to be, those apps are connected to 3 or 4 other apps that provide incremental capability, and they're all linked together, linked to one another, and maybe with maybe the exception of just adding a common sign-on through some social media medium, that integration is already there, and that's the strategy that we see and are bringing to the world of supply chain. So specifically looking at our TMS, we've designed it to be incredibly open, because we had the mindset that this capability shouldn't be insular. We want to take advantage of all of these innovations and capabilities that, quite honestly, in today's age are popping up at an accelerated rate, and here we have the ability to leverage the innovations that Loadsmart provides in a very open, seamless way, to our customer base, and we see that building more and more over time.
Absolutely. So as we move forward to the next slide, what we want to talk about a little bit is to be very blunt with our shippers and our customers in asking you guys to ask yourselves, how mature, how advanced are the solutions that you've implemented in order to make sure that your freight is moving, in order to make sure that your freight is getting where it's supposed to be, when it's supposed to be there. And I think the key theme here, and we won't dig into each of the details of this, although of course it's worth taking a look afterwards and really asking yourself on each of these points, where do you fit in? But I think the key question really that summarizes this whole perspective is, are you reacting to challenges that are popping up in your supply chain, or are you anticipating them? Because unfortunately, given the market that we saw in 2018, given the market that we're seeing now again in 2020, difficult is the new normal, right? Challenging and unpredictable is the new normal. But the reality is that there are solutions out there that have been built and designed in order to be tough, in order to be sturdy, in order to be reliable and durable, even in very difficult market conditions. So the question is, are you implementing these solutions in order to have confidence that when the market is challenging, you're well positioned to not only get through it, but potentially even to some extent to take advantage of that chaos, of that flex in the market, of that flux in the market? Or are you kind of caught off guard and forced to respond to these situations already on the back foot in an ad hoc, pick up the phone, send a bunch of emails, try to respond last minute manner? And so we do want to challenge our customers to ask themselves where they fit into this framework, and to suggest that the solutions that Blue Yonder together with Loadsmart offer will position you very well to be in a much better place when the market does shift unexpectedly. And again, the unexpected now kind of has to become the expected. And in order for you to have confidence that your system is robust and that it's going to respond to whatever the market does very quickly and in a highly autonomous manner. So going forward, we want to kind of break out a few essential themes for the conversation today. We want to talk a little bit about insights, which of course is data and the ability to really think through both where your vendors and you yourself could perform better in order to yield a better result. The strategy of your transportation solutions, how optimization fits into that, which is a much more tactical approach to saying, hey, where are the specific points in my solution that I could be doing better as a shipper, or my vendors could be performing better. And of course, how automation fits into that optimization, how it's critical to pick the right moments within the flow and to say, listen, I don't need my team or my vendors' teams manually spending time on this. There's an automated solution that can do it much better, so that I can leave my team and their resources to focus on resolving more difficult, complex situations that are really deserving of that attention of a logistics professional, and let the rest be handled by the systems themselves. So as we dig a little bit more into these, the first one is insights. And going straight into insights, the first critical insight, of course, are rates, right? What are you paying your contracted carriers, and what are you paying your backup and spot carriers versus what you should be? And of course, there are a whole bunch of folks out there, whether it's DAT or FreightWaves or others, who are providing an index or a range of indices that will provide you with a huge amount of data. And we have a lot of respect for the work that they're doing and for the solutions that they provide in terms of giving that analytical capability. But you cannot go to DAT, see a DAT rate for a lane, and click and book, right? It is an index, it is a data point. It's not a liquid rate. It's not something that you can execute. So in order for you to have the optionality, the choice, the selection within your network of trusted contracted carriers, whether that's at a fixed rate or at a spot or a variable rate, you need to have the options of variable prices pumped into your TMS at all times. So Loadsmart is able to provide rates using a machine learning model that we developed in order to be able to provide an instantly bookable rate on any one of about 900,000 lanes across the US in between 2 and 3 seconds. And that instantly bookable rate, calculated by an algorithm and delivered directly into your instance of Blue Yonder through the integration that we've built, is a way for you to have that optionality, to understand where is the rate that I booked at versus where I could have been with my other providers. What's the right balance between my asset heavy and my broker? What's the right balance between my contracted and my spot? Where should I look to my backup rates, my secondary, tertiary, and how should I find the right balance for my freight in terms of that key sweet spot between price and service? And you can't do that without data. And if you receive data purely from a third-party index, That doesn't mean that it's bookable. What you need is data on what you could have booked, what you could have secured as a rate, so that you compare your actual to your potential and constantly see opportunities for improvement. And then if we move ahead, a second point on this, of course, is the strategy of this process, the strategy of your procurement and how you think about securing capacity. So getting a little bit into the details on this.
Right.
So over to Pat.
Okay, thanks, Hunter. So here, what we talk about is in this world of strategy and with the innovations that are now accelerating in the marketplace and are making things possible that weren't possible before, it's allowing us to think about the notion of supply chain, and in particular in the world of supply chain execution or transportation and logistics, in a very different way. So the art, we have to start thinking about the art of the possible and really change our mindset. And there's a couple of ways to really things to think about. One is we talk about boundaryless planning or boundaryless logistics. And this is where, and you'll hear me repeat this a lot, I talk a lot about breaking down silos. So the way we think about things is less and less just about a silo like transport and more about thinking about logistics across the broader spectrum. So how do I balance resources which include labor in my warehouse, assets that I'm running on the road, automation and robotics, right? Thinking about all those as a holistic set of resources that I need to be able to optimize and execute on in an efficient and resilient manner, right? So breaking down those silos, and then breaking them down even further and looking across beyond just the world of execution. And how do I break down the silos between traditional, for example, upstream planning and downstream execution, as well as customer order realization fulfillment, right? And starting to look at the notion of use cases rather than these traditional functional silos that we've all kind of grown up in, right? So what is the use case that's going to drive a particular outcome? And how are we aligning those use cases to drive a particular outcome targeted at our customer, which is at the center of everything? And then with even greater advancements around technology, right, around the abundance of data, around the ability to apply advanced, machine learning and artificial intelligence techniques to those masses of data, that brings us into this world of cognitive or predictive capabilities. So when we think about kind of the forward-looking goal of really driving an autonomous supply chain, these techniques come to bear and really talk about allowing our solutions to make decisions and allowing us to focus on higher grade strategy as opposed to the nitty-gritty little details. Let the solutions take care of those things, have them become predictive, and really guide us into much more intelligent and resilient supply chains. Next slide. And then, one thing that I talk a lot about, with customers about is, well, how do I get there? And, that sounds really complex and it's pie in the sky. How do I effectively, get at some of these innovations and drive some of these techniques, right? The whole reference to, digitization or transformation sounds like such a big undertaking. And, my counsel here is you really need to take a look at things. This is where the term use case comes into play, right? In the past, when we thought about technology and solving problems, right, you came out of the world of defining your requirements and putting together an RFP and going out and looking at solutions and demonstrations and taking that, kind of project-based approach, right, large-scale project approach. Now we have to think about use cases because that historical method really guided you and focused you in a particular silo. We need to think about flows that span across those silos and really focus on the customer. So the idea here is really take it in a number of steps. First of all, decide, break down the problem into those use cases. What are the types of things that you're trying to solve? And what are the things that you need to bring together in order to solve those problems, right? drive those use cases, define them, and then allocate your projects and teams accordingly, right? Worry less about organizational silos and functional silos. If you think across use cases, it allows you to break those down. You create much more dynamic teams, and you'll be amazed at the results that you can drive very quickly. Again, very targeted at this notion of customer centricity.
Awesome. So let's get a little bit more then into the nuts and bolts. I think that was very helpful by way of helping us frame the problem more broadly and how to think about it. Let's get into the details of what that optimization of your transportation procurement can look like, and how the solutions that Loadsmart and Blue Yonder together can help you achieve that.
So when we think about optimization, this is a space that we've played in a long time. It's been a core competency at Blue Yonder for since the inception of our practice. And our approach has always been to model as many constraints as we can, reflecting what we think will happen, right? So things about, things like what kind of capacity do you have? What type of assets? What are their dimensions? How many do you have? On what lanes, right? What are your base rates? So having a starting point on your carrier costs, whether they be, contract carriers or whether you're leveraging a fleet, right? What are the hours of operation? What are throughput at your facilities? All of those things coming together to create a set of qualified movements, right? And what we always try to refer to as an executable plan. And that always will have a place. And where we're moving towards is today, we model things as best we can based on current knowledge. Where we're moving to is now inserting this notion of predictive as a part of that, trying to anticipate where things may break down, where you may have disruptions, so that these plans become less static and much more resilient as those disruptions happen. But in this context, when we talk about dynamic rates, you still always have to have a starting point, but when you need to now go and execute, this is where I'm going to hand it off to Hunter, where this type of dynamic workflow becomes incredibly powerful.
So as we think about this from a legacy or a static rate solution, your options are effectively the following. You've got your primary, your contracted carrier, who hopefully in a good market, in a market where capacity is a little bit less constrained, is going to accept your tenders the vast majority of the time. However, for most of 2020, we have seen a scenario where in the range of the low to high 20% of tenders are rejected by primary award carriers. So that's a good quarter of your planned freight allocation at the beginning of the year in terms of who you thought was going to be moving those loads. That's just gone out the window. And in some cases, for customers who are moving a lot of reefer freight or other specialty goods, they're seeing even higher tender rejection rates in the 30s or the 40s. So when you consider that as much, if not more than a quarter of your original planned allocation of freight across your carriers can, in a tough market, which we've seen now twice in the space of 2 years, go completely out the window, you have to ask yourself, to what extent do your integrated dynamic solutions position you to have much more optionality, to have much more choice? And the very simple reality is that if every single time your contracted or award carrier rejects a load, you have already received multiple instantly bookable rates into your system, and if you receive them from providers like Loadsmart, who accept 100% of the tenders, rather than relying on static rates, which you have to shoot out the tender to the carrier in order to understand whether they're going to accept or decline, and then work your way down that static list, not sure whether or not any of your backup, your secondary or tertiary carriers are going to accept their static rates, and ultimately in a matter of hours before pickup, find yourself playing the spot market, desperately pounding the phones and email, trying to get in any carrier who's willing to move the load. Instead, you can have instantly bookable rates received even in parallel with the rate request that you send to your primary or award carrier. So you can ping Loadsmart and other providers through your Blue Yonder instance at the same time as you ask your contractor or award carrier whether they're going to move the load, so that if they reject, you already have rates populated in your system, which you can then execute on with confidence that that rate will be a rate that is liquid. It can actually, it's not a paper rate, that Loadsmart will accept the tender when it's sent over. So that optionality, that choice that gives you, to say nothing of the visibility and the understanding of where you are relative to the market that you receive, even if you choose not to book at that rate, is extremely valuable, and it costs you precisely nothing. You don't have to pick up the phone. You don't have to send an email. You don't have to pay for an integration. It's all built in. And we believe that that visibility, that optionality is exactly what smart shippers are using these days to make sure that even when the market is tough, they still have exactly the right choices from providers they trust, but that they can execute very quickly and with minimal manual intervention. Because of course, the very same market conditions that make it hard to secure capacity are also the same market conditions that are going to lead to a spike in exceptions, in problems in your supply chain. And so you need your team to be focused on the things that really only a person with logistics experience can get in and solve, and not worrying about whether someone's going to accept or decline the tender, or whether you have enough rates in your system. So we believe that this solution is a really great way to address that problem. So wrapping up, the last piece of what we want to talk about is automation. And of course, automation is key to how you can provide that optimization. So let's get into the details of this again a little bit, because we believe that this is really where the technology that Blue Yonder has built and the technology that Loadsmart have built find a great point of overlap.
Yeah. So when we think about automation, right, let's frame a context. And those of you out there, probably like me, you've seen, you know, a lot of supply chains, a lot of customers, a lot of interactions, and everyone knows that when a system isn't operating exactly the way you want, or a change happens, or a market dynamic happens, you know, what we see a lot of is people, you know, engaging in manual processes and workarounds, you know, external capabilities, certainly a lot of spreadsheets I've seen over the years, right? And what we're seeing today is really the convergence of two forces that's really changing the dynamics. First is, you know, we're seeing greater, you know, pressure from our customers, right? This is we talk a lot about customer-centric supply chains, shipping to individual consumers, not just a retail problem. You know, every participant in the supply chain feels the pressure of having to respond and become much more resilient and dynamic. But you combine that with the changes and acceleration of technology that we've been talking about, and particularly this notion of the open app ecosystem, where we can take existing capabilities and really call out to these additional, you know, net new innovations that are appearing in the marketplace in our world, either whether we're developing them or with a partner like Loadsmart. It's allowing you to now insert capabilities to deal with these things that maybe, you know, maybe you would have put a manual process in place to deal with them in the past. And as those interactions become simpler and simpler and easier to bring together, you can apply this layer of automation to them. And this is where I can't stress enough, the notion of the use case comes into play. What activities are you engaging in to get to drive a particular outcome? How many of those really do need to be manual versus how many can actually be automated? And you'll be surprised at the answer when you dig a little deeper. And with the innovations that we're bringing to the table here and in general in the world of technology, a lot can actually be automated more so than you would normally think.
Absolutely, and I think the trend that Fab was referring to of solution providers, whether it's in your warehouse management, your dock scheduling, your tracking solutions, or providing end-to-end rate pickup, delivery, and invoicing services like Loadsmart does. There's so many providers out there, and this network approach that Blue Yonder is taking of being really the hub where all of those providers can plug in has yielded a great partnerships, which allows shippers to take full advantage of Loadsmart's solutions without having to leave their native Blue Yonder system, which we believe is really kind of the optimal match of plugging in every service that you need, but finding it within the operating system that you're already used to and comfortable using, and where your data already lives, where your team has already been trained. And we think that that's, you know, really the balance that's essential to maximizing your choices while minimizing the friction and the amount of training and work that you have to do to be able to tap into the services that companies like Loadsmart provide. So how does this work at a really, really tactical level? What we're going to do is give you guys a sense of how you can compare the rates that you have logged in your system, both your primary and your secondary or backup rates, with the instantly bookable rates that Loadsmart provides. So, for example, if you choose to put Loadsmart head-to-head with your primary carrier, we can come in and see whether Loadsmart is more or less competitive than that primary carrier. In a lot of cases, we probably won't be, and we do not want to set the expectation that Loadsmart is the cheapest solution out there. When you're looking for an instantly bookable rate, generally that is going to be a little higher than what you've secured on your contracted rates. Not always, but most of the time. But what Loadsmart is offering is the instant booking confidence that if you see the rate and you click it and book it, we will accept that tender. And then it's backed up by a high service level, a professional account management team that's going to be there when you need them, as well as high visibility and a low friction invoicing solution. So that then can be compared not only to your primary, but also to your secondary or your backup carriers. So that within your SmartBench and your rate shop solutions within Blue Yonder, you are able to compare that Loadsmart rate to those backup rates, and all this can be done in an autonomous way. Blue Yonder requests the rate from us, receives the rate from us, and if you set it up in a certain way, you can actually have the entire process of the rate comparison automated and have those tenders sent over. So whether you want to put us up against your primary, your secondary, your backup, or both, those rates can be received, compared, and the tender sent to Loadsmart and accepted, all with no human intervention within the integration that we've built with Blue Yonder, which we think is exciting, gives shippers more choice, more optionality, and does so in a way that requires, in some cases, actually no engagement or involvement from the shipper, leaving you more time to focus on exception management, data analysis, and other more kind of value add activities that you and your team should really be focused on. And then, of course, within the rate shop, we offer a very similar solution, which is that if you want to insert us in a particular point within that secondary or backup routing guide, you can do so, receive that dynamic real-time rate, and as soon as you realize that the Loadsmart rate, or rather as soon as your instance of Blue Yonder automatically realizes that that Loadsmart rate is better than your next best option within the other rates that you have provided, can automatically tender the load over to Loadsmart. You have confidence that you've secured the best rate because you know that your next best rate would have been more expensive. And at the same time, again, all this can be done in a frictionless, autonomous flow through the integration that we've built together with Blue Yonder. So how do you know if this is relevant for you? How do you know whether these are really tools and solutions that you should invest in? Well, ask yourself the following questions. Do you believe that you are overpaying for your freight solutions? There may be cases where you're not, but we think if you really ask yourself this question, you're going to find that there are areas where you suspect that you are. Do you find that there are more people within your team who are working full time on coordinating your logistics needs than you would like to have? Do you believe that you should have a leaner, more efficient team on your side, and that you should put more weight on your vendors? Let your vendors like Blue Yonder, like Loadsmart, do more of the work for you. Do you find that forecasting is a struggle? Do you find that your planned budget for the year, that your planned carrier allocation for the year are going out the window much more often than you would like, and that on many lanes, it's just not looking the way that you thought it was going to look at the beginning of the year? Or do you find that unpredictable issues, whether that's service level issues, whether that's tender rejections, interruptions, late pickup, late delivery, are happening more frequently than you would like them to be? If any of those things are the case, we are confident, because our customers are already benefiting from this, that the solutions that Loadsmart together with Blue Yonder have developed can and will help you address these issues, that we will help you adjust your spend to be able to allocate what you pay more closely to what the market rates are, and not just rely on static rates, but instead take advantage of market conditions, even when they're very tough. That the automation of what we provide is going to help you reduce your overhead cost and move more with less, with fewer people on your team. That the predictability will actually become less essential because the system is more robust, and therefore, whichever way the market goes, you're positioned to be in a good position. And again, that the visibility that we provide will mean that even when things are challenging, that you have a good grip of where your freight is, what's going on, and a clear understanding of both the challenges as well as the options to resolve them that are available to you.
Thank you, Hunter and Fab. Let's jump right into these questions. First, the market has been volatile, and many say it's likely to get worse in the coming months. What should I do first to prepare?
It's a great question. I think there are those who are convinced that tomorrow everything is going to get better. There are those who are convinced that tomorrow everything's going to get worse, and there's those who are convinced that tomorrow everything's going to stay the same. Our view is that if at this point, after several years of high market volatility, you're still betting the farm on whether you can predict what's going to happen tomorrow, you're not thinking about the problem the right way. Instead, we believe that it's a question of implementing solutions that position you to be in the best possible position you can be, not always necessarily a great position relative to where you'd like to be, But given how challenging the market can be, at least to have the confidence that you are in as good a situation as you could be by implementing solutions like those that we offer in order to maximize your optionality, maximize your visibility, maximize automation, and in doing so, leave your team as much bandwidth as possible to resolve unexpected issues that come up. Give yourself confidence that you've considered every option on the table, and that even if you're not crazy about the one that you have to use, you know that it's the best one that's available. And do this in a way that is automated, transparent, and efficient.
Yeah, I would just add commentary there that, you know, when things are rosy, organizations sometimes get complacent and they think they don't need to invest. As Hunter said, you know, you think everything's going to be the same tomorrow. The environment we're living through right now shows that that's just not the case. And it's putting incredible pressure on a lot of organizations. And, you know, we're seeing a lot, certainly in our customer base, of those that are looking to invest and you know, look at the challenges being presented, and now, you know, asking different questions and more advanced questions and more holistic questions, and embracing some of the newer technologies out there to look at things very differently and create that greater sense of resiliency. There's no better driver of innovation than necessity, and I think a lot of organizations out there now are living that.
Great, thank you. Will enabling the integration put Loadsmart in all of my rate shops?
Sure, Fab, do you want to speak to that?
Sorry, I couldn't, you just cut out for a second. Could you repeat that, Adrian?
Sure. Will enabling the integration put Loadsmart in all of my rate shops?
Oh yes, yeah. It's a capability that can be put across the board, or you have some flexibility there if you want to enable it for certain lanes. But as Hunter pointed out, and I think he called out the workflows earlier, it could be a fully automated function. It could be a manual step that's inserted. There's a tremendous amount of flexibility there, depending on how and where you want to engage it.
Great, and let's take one more question. I think we covered this, but worth mentioning again. So what is the cost for enabling dynamic price discovery in Blue Yonder?
Right, so for our shipper customers, we're enabling that as an extension to the TMS. There might be just some service capabilities that we have to, you know, just some time and materials to engage it. But otherwise, we're enabling that as an offer for our shipper customers. And really, the cost, as Hunter pointed out, is really invoked when you're moving freight through the marketplace.
With that said, I'd like to thank everyone for joining, and I hope you found the webinar valuable and were able to learn something today. If we did not get to your question, I assure you will reach out directly. Thanks again for joining, everyone.